Welcome to the November 12th, 2019 County Commission meeting. I'm going to ask Sheriff John Fuson to call the meeting to order, and if you would, please remain standing for the pledge led by Commissioner Pritchard and our invocation by Commissioner Creek.
All rise. Oh yes, this Honorable Board of County Commissioners is now in session pursuant to adjournment. Now may God save this state and this Honorable Court of County Commission.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Our Father and our God, we thank you for your love and your watch care. We thank you for our veterans and the sacrifices they made. We know that some gave some, but some gave all. Now, just lead and guide, direct us during our meeting tonight, and when our views differ, let us respect each other. Just guide and direct us now, for it's in Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Ms. Jackson, would you please tally the roll?
You have 21 present, 0 absent.
Commissioners, we have a couple of presentations to make. If I could get Mr. Philip Morris, Mr. Ray McDowell, and Mr. John Brown to come forward. Andrew, do you want to come up and say a word or two about these before we present these certificates of appreciation?
Andrew Custer, Director of Montgomery County Veteran Services. You got my addresses too?
No.
Okay. When I came on board first part of the year, I was kind of looking around the office and kind of getting the feel of things. And one thing I noticed in the storage room was a couple markers, grave markers, veterans grave markers. And in the past, the markers used to be delivered to our office, but then when they got too heavy and UPS wouldn't take them, wouldn't bring them, they were sent freight. Directly to the funeral homes and cemeteries. So one thing that I did is I took it on, John and I took on a mission to find these unmarked graves and get these veterans memorialized. And we found 2 of them right off the bat, and the Shriners, with John's help and Philip's help, was able to mark 2 veterans' graves that were 12 years old to receive their memorial.
Thank you, Andrew. So, gentlemen, on behalf of all of Montgomery Countyans, we just want to say thank you for caring, really, for doing something that a lot of people don't want to do, but for taking the time out of your lives to honor these veterans. And we have a very small certificate of appreciation that we'd like to present to each of you. I won't read the whole thing. I'll just read the first one, but it's a certificate of appreciation presented on behalf of Montgomery County to Philip Morris, Roy McDowell, and John Brown in recognition of your outstanding dedication and commitment to a worthy cause. So, gentlemen, thank you to each of you. And also, as Commissioner Creek mentioned in his prayers, just thanking our veterans, over the course of last week, I was able to visit some of our offices, not all of them, but my chief of staff, Kyle Johnson, attended, where we recognized all of our veterans with a very small token of Montgomery County's appreciation. I'd like to do the same thing tonight. So, commissioners, if you would, when I call your name, if you just come forward, I'd like to give you just a small token of our appreciation. We have several commissioners that are veterans. And so, Mr. Joe Creek. and Mr. Charlie Keene. Thank you, Commissioner Keene. Commissioner Tangi Smith and Carmel Chandler. Commissioner Jason Knight. And Commissioner James Lewis. And Commissioner Chris Rasnick, Walker Woodruff, Chris Rasnick? Nope, okay, sorry. Commissioner Woodruff? Thanks, sir. Thank you for your service. And Commissioner Rashida Leverett and Commissioner Joe Smith. Two rows real quick. Yeah, just, it don't matter. Go towards the middle. And real quickly, Mr. Kyle Johnson and Ms. Michelle Newell, if y'all will come forward, I know we recognized all of our employees except the ones in the mayor's office, so we want to recognize y'all tonight as well. Commissioners, our first item of business is approval of our October 14th, 2019 minutes. Is there a motion for approval? Commissioner Ray, second Commissioner Gannon. Any discussion? If you would, please register your vote. Would anyone like to change their vote? Ms. Jackson, would you please tally the vote?
You have 21 yeses, 0 noes, 0 abstentions.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioners, we have two zoning resolutions before us tonight. The first one is CZ 16, 2019, application of Patricia G. Stockdale Woodard from AG to E1. Is there a motion for approval? Commissioner Lewis, second Commissioner Beal. Any discussion on CZ 16? If you would, please register your vote. Would anyone like to change their vote? Ms. Jackson, would you please tally the vote?
You have 21 yeses, 0 noes, 0 abstentions.
Thank you, ma'am. CZ 17, 2019, application to Neely Revocable Living Trust, care of Edwin and Charity Neely from AG to C2. Is there a motion for approval? Commissioner Riccone, second Commissioner Joe Smith. Any discussion? Commissioner Woodruff.
I'm concerned about this particular site based on the status of the Planning Commission staff. They recommend disapproval based on it's not fitting into the land use plan, the growth plan. There's a lot of issues that are associated with it. It's just not out of character for this particular site. There's no fire hydrant. There have to be a fire hydrant within 300 feet of this site, and it's not there. I went out and surveyed the property, looked at the property, walked it off, and it's within less than 25 to 40 feet from a 500 kilowatt power line that's ran by TVA. So I'm concerned about it. If we vote to approve it for commercial, then there's 61 possibilities in the future that this land could be zoned for or be used for. And we don't want to put that in this particular area based on the residential and agricultural area for this. So I'll be voting no for this.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Gannon.
Thank you, Mayor. The main reason why the staff was because it wasn't in the planned growth area. It's absolutely true. But I think if you talk to a lot of them, they would say that they would like to see it pass as well. Being by TVA structures and the power lines, there's really nothing else that can go there. He's using it. He lives down a quarter mile down the road from it. So he's vested in that neighborhood. And I urge all my commissioners to vote in favor of it.
Commissioner Joe Smith.
I agree with everything Mr. Gannon said. I live less than a mile from this site. It's a wet area. It's not much use for anything else, not even for agriculture. It is under TVA lines. I applaud Mr. Neely for coming forward seeking the right zoning when he could have just popped up a barn and nobody would have ever known what was inside of it. So I'd urge you to vote yes for this one.
Any other discussion on CZ 17, 2019? If you would, please register your vote. Would anyone like to change their vote? Ms. Jackson, would you please tally the vote?
You have 20 yeses, 1 no, 0 abstentions.
Thank you, ma'am. On to our resolutions. First resolution is 1911-1, resolution of Montgomery County Board of Commissioners approving amendments to the 2019-2020 school budget. Is there a motion for approval? Commissioner Pritchard, second. Commissioner Knight. Any discussion? If you would, please register your vote. Would anyone like to change their vote? Ms. Jackson, would you please tally the vote?
You have 21 yeses, 0 no's, 0 abstentions.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioners, you'll see on your agenda 1911-2 is deferred into our December meeting. So 1911-3 is a resolution to modify distant rules for application of beer laws pursuant to Tennessee Code Annotated 575101. Is there a motion for approval? Commissioner Lewis, second. Commissioner Keene, any discussion on 1911-3? Commissioner Beal.
Thank you, Mayor. I had actually brought this idea forward out of our beer board committee because we had an issue with an applicant that we had to deny because of a distance rule. And we sent this to the Rules Committee to have them review it, and we didn't hear anything back after that. So I do understand being less restrictive here, but I don't know that 0 is the correct way to go. Simply because this would essentially allow anybody to sell beer right next to a school or a daycare. So I would like to make an amendment to, or I'm sorry, I would like to propose an amendment to change this to 500 feet.
Turn your microphone on and tell them.
There are two distance rules. The distance rule on public gathering places is currently 1,000, can be no more than 2,000 by statute. The distance from residential dwelling by statute is 300 feet as is. So you would actually be increasing the residential portion if you went to 500 on both.
Commissioner Bill, you want to restate that? Do you want to do 500 across the boards?
So is this resolution addressing both of those or just the one?
Yes, it addresses both of them.
Okay, so can I propose an amendment to change it to 500 feet for the first part of that?
Yes.
From public gathering spots?
Yes, sir.
And that's all you want to change?
Yes, sir.
And so you leave the residential at 0? I don't want to vote. I just want to make sure you're putting your amendment out there that's the way you want it.
There are two beer rules in, right now, public gathering place is 1,000 feet, residential is 300. This resolution as written, which you're proposing to amend, is 0 on both counts.
So if you just change the public gathering spot from 1,000 to 500, the residential stays at 0.
Can I amend both of them
Yes,
to two different things?
yes,
Okay, so I think we know what I want to do here. So for the public gathering, change it to 500 feet and leave the residential alone.
leave it at,
So your motion is to change your amendment is to change the distance from public gathering places from 0 to 500 feet, leaving the rest of it alone.
Yes.
Is there a second? Second, Commissioner Tangi Smith. Okay, we're now voting on the amendment. Any discussion on the amendment? I'm sorry, before we vote. Sorry. Commissioner Harper, on the amendment.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. Question, no matter what our distance rules are, you still have to get a permit, right?
It
You
has
have
to be
go before the
properly
Beer Board.
zoned, all that stuff.
No matter, that doesn't change.
No.
I think some folks were maybe misunderstood the process. Even if we were to change it from 0 feet to the 500 feet that we're talking about, you still have to make an application, and it still has to be permitted.
You have to have a permit to sell beer, no matter what your distance rules are.
Correct. No matter what the rule is.
Correct.
Thank you.
Commissioner Creek, on the amendment.
I want to make a motion that we defer it back to the board for further study.
We have to vote on the First Amendment first. So we have a motion and second on the amendment. Any other discussion? If you would, please register your vote on the amendment. Would anyone like to change their vote? Ms. Jackson, would you please tally the vote?
You have 2 yeses, 19 noes, 0 abstentions.
Okay, now we're back on 1911-3. Is there a motion for approval? Commissioner Lewis, is there a second? I understand the process, but we're back on the original motion. We have a motion for approval. Is there a second? Second, Commissioner Harper. Any discussion? Mr. Creek, if you'd like to make your statement now, I think now would be the time.
Well, I want to make a motion that we defer it back to the beer board for further study.
The form of that motion would actually mean taking it off the agenda tonight, and a new resolution would have to come back.
Okay. Is that your motion, Mr. Creek?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second? Commissioner Beal? Any discussion? I would like to add one thing. This has been before our Rules Committee twice. That's where it's going to go back to. The Beer Board actually enforces our rules. They don't create our rules. They can make recommendations. And so this will go back to the Rules Committee. Any other discussion on the amendment? Commissioner Leverett?
Yes, I would just advise that if this passes, if it goes back to the Rules Committee, that my commissioners would really go and study the TCA and all the amendments to that laws, particularly about denial of beer permits and the laws that have gone before the Tennessee Supreme Court. We cannot deny because of morality, whether it's a public gathering or not. So I do think this needs to go back to studying so that my fellow commissioners know exactly what the code says concerning distance rules and beer permits.
Any other discussion on the motion to send this back to the Rules Committee? And I guess that's an amendment, Tim, or I'm just asking for the clerk. Turn your microphone on, please.
The form of the motion would be a motion to table this and go back to the Rules Committee, which would take it off the
Okay.
agenda.
You good, Ms. Jackson?
You're actually going to take it off the agenda instead of referring it back.
Well, I mean, it's still going to be written down there, but the motion is it won't be voted on tonight. It would take another resolution to come back.
Okay. Commissioner Harper?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to reiterate what the mayor stated earlier, this has already been to the Rules Committee 3 times. It's gone to the Beer Board once. It's come back. I think sending it back again to the Rules Committee, personally, I don't like that idea. I think we ought to vote on it right now and decide what we're going to do with the understanding that anytime anyone makes a application to sell beer, they have to come before the Beer Board and that has to be approved. So please take that into account.
Any other discussion? If you would, please register your vote. Would anyone like to change their vote? Ms. Jackson, would you please tally the vote?
You have 18 yeses, 3 noes, 0 abstentions.
Thank you, ma'am. That'll go back to the Rules Committee. Resolution 1911-4 is a resolution to allow prepayments of real and personal property taxes in the office of Montgomery County Trustee. Is there a motion for approval? Commissioner Bryan, is there a second? Commissioner Leverett, any discussion? If you would, please register your vote. Would anyone like to change their vote? Ms. Jackson, would you please tally the vote?
You have 21 yeses, 0 noes, 0 abstentions.
Thank you, ma'am. Resolution 1911-5, initial resolution authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $130,700,000 federally tax exempt or federally taxable general obligation bonds of Montgomery County, Tennessee. Is there a motion for approval? Commissioner Pritchard, second. Commissioner Keene, any discussion? Commissioner Gannon.
Thank you, Mayor Durrett. I just wanted to bring up, I'm going to, on the next resolution, 1911-6, even though these tie together, I wanted to kind of bring it up now. The Mayor Durrett and I have talked a bunch about the resolution and the contract with Austin P and the Predators. So I will be submitting a motion, as the mayor wants to see it as well, for transparency, that will allow that the bonds, we would have to come back for another vote if we did not enter into the contract with the primary tenant and the management team vis-a-vis Austin P and the Predators. So I will be sending that amendment on the next resolution.
Thank you. Commissioner Beal.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to propose an amendment, and I've got hard copies here for everybody, so I'm not sure what the best way is to pass them out.
Mr. Stone, or one of our deputies.
Thank you. And thank you, Shelley, for making those copies. I appreciate it. I would like to move to amend this resolution to strike the language in its entirety and replace it with this language, converting the initial resolution to an election resolution.
I'm going to let everybody get a copy of it. I don't know why those weren't handed out in the beginning.
Thank you for passing.
Investigator Stone, I need a copy of it, please. I hadn't seen it. Thank you. Is it all three of them? Oh. Okay, Commissioner Bill, would you like to restate your motion now that everyone has a copy of it?
Yes, sir. I would like to move to amend this resolution to strike the language in its entirety and replace it with this language, converting the initial resolution to an election resolution.
Is there a second? Commissioner Butts, any discussion on the amendment? Commissioner Smith? Joe Smith?
I would just like to ask Commissioner Beal, why wait until 16 minutes before this meeting tonight to submit this resolution for the rest of us to read in 5 minutes? That, in my opinion, shows no forethought of what was planned in here. We're here to vote on the amendment or the resolution that's at hand, and we're given a 3-page summary of an amendment 5 minutes now, from 5 minutes ago. Just not acceptable, in my opinion. That's all.
Thank you. Commissioner Knight?
I just wanted to ask, is there going to be a cost to the taxpayer to place this item on a ballot?
Yeah, I guess. I would assume.
This converts the initial resolution to an election resolution. It requires the election commission to deal with the state election coordinator, and they will decide when and how it will be placed on a ballot. Honestly, I could speculate, but I wouldn't want you to have me speculate about how they would do that. If it was placed on an existing election ballot, then the cost would be less or negligible. If they said a special election, it would be the cost of the special election. But it's the state election coordinator that sets it,
Not us.
not us.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Knight? Thank you. Commissioner Beal?
Thank you. I just wanted to reply to Commissioner Smith's comments. I followed the process that we always follow to file an amendment. I followed the advice of our county attorney, and I did exactly what he told me to do. So this is no different than any other amendment. And I'll say it again, you can support the event center and still be supportive of a referendum. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the amendment? Ms. Jackson, do you have the amendment?
Yes, sir.
If you would, please register your vote. What? On the amendment. Would anyone like to change their vote? Ms. Jackson, would you please tally the vote?
You have 6 yeses, 14 noes, 1 abstention.
Thank you, ma'am. We're now back on the initial resolution authorizing the issuance. I'm not going to read it unless you want me to, but 1911-5. Any discussion on 1911-5? If you would, please register your vote. Would anyone, I'm sorry, somebody else has got to vote. I'm sorry. Commissioner Bill, there you go. Would anyone like to change their vote? Ms. Jackson, would you please tally the vote?
You have 17 yeses, 4 noes, 0 abstentions.
Thank you, ma'am. Resolution 1911-6 is a resolution authorizing the issuance of federally tax-exempt or federally taxable general obligation bonds of Montgomery County, Tennessee, in the aggregate principal amount of not to exceed $130,700,000 in one or more series, making provisions for the issuance, sale, and payment of said bonds, establishing the terms thereof and the disposition of proceeds therefrom, providing for the levy of taxes for the payment of principal of, premium, if any, and interest on the bonds, and authorizing the execution and delivery of an intergovernmental agreement relating to said bonds and a multipurpose event center within the county. Is there a motion for approval? Commissioner Pritchard, second. Commissioner Riccone. Any discussion? Commissioner Gannon.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, having talked with the mayor, and the mayor is in full support of this amendment and would like to see this amendment as well. And it's gone through a lot of hands. It's went through our council, our bond council, as well as Blasberry and Sims, and through our attorney, Tim. And this is the amendment. Notwithstanding anything herein to the contrary, comma, no bonds shall be issued pursuant to the resolution until the county or sports authority, comma, as applicable, comma, enters into a fully executed, open parentheses, there's an I there, close parentheses, which must stand for number 1, the lease agreement with the primary tenant for the multipurpose event center comprising part of the projects, open parentheses, the event center in quotation marks, close parentheses, relating to the use of the event center and open parentheses, 2 I's, which stands for a 2, close parentheses, agreement with the facility manager relating to the management of the event center. I put that in the form of the motion, which basically, in essence, which has got its legalese, means that if we don't sign with Austin P or with the Predators, that the bond issue has to come back up for a vote again. Is that correct, Mayor? It's pretty much correct.
Well, I think what it says is prior to the sale of any bond to the sale of the bonds, that we will have contracts in place or we won't sell the bonds.
That is correct.
Is there a second? Commissioner Harper, any discussion? Commissioner Beal?
Thank you. Okay, so I just want to understand what we're amending here. So because we don't have signed contracts yet, even though we were told we were going to have them, what we're saying is that we won't actually issue the bonds until we have those signed contracts in place. Okay, so that's not going to come before us again for another vote?
What, I don't understand what's not going to come before.
Only if we don't have one of them signed.
Well, if we don't have them, it won't come back before you. Yeah, and if we do that, it'll have to come back before this body. Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? If you would, please register your vote on the amendment. Thank you. Would anyone like to change their vote? Ms. Jackson, would you please tally the vote?
You have 19 yeses, 2 noes, 0 abstentions.
Thank you, ma'am. Now we're voting on Resolution 1911-6 as amended. Any discussion? If you would, please register your vote. Would anyone like to change their vote?
Thank you.
Ms. Jackson, would you please tally the vote?
You have 17 yeses, 4 noes, 0 abstentions.
Thank you, ma'am. Resolution 1911-7 is a resolution to establish smoke-free guidelines for all Montgomery County government property. Is there a motion for approval? Commissioner Beal, is there a second? Commissioner Woodruff, any discussion? Commissioner Garland Johnson.
So we had some discussion about this in the Budget Committee. And honestly, I understand the reason for it. I understand Commissioner Harper's motivation, and I appreciate our Health Department Director for his input on this. The problem that I have with it is county buildings are not frequented by the same people every day. The person that you see in front of the courthouse today will not be back tomorrow, in most cases. And the same could be said at the clerk's office where you go to get your tags. You probably will not be back there for another year. The only people that are at that location every day are the county employees. And I feel that we as commissioners need to look out for the county employees as well as the general public. And I know there are some employees that, there may be a lot of employees that don't smoke and they don't appreciate having a cloud of smoke that they have to walk through. But I believe that the majority of our county employees are considerate of their coworkers and do not stand in entryways that are commonly frequented by everyone. I think that they make their best effort to avoid those areas. If we implement this 100-foot rule, is it 25 feet now? You are still not going to find a place that is covered in that area where these people who are smokers can go and smoke without being out in the elements. You're going to have people standing out in the rain. You're going to, I mean, this will only affect the county employees. I personally do not smoke, but I feel I must respect the right of those who wish to smoke. I just can't see putting restrictions on an adult for doing something that is completely legal. If this was not phrased to where it applied to every single entranceway, then I believe I would see it differently. If it was the main entranceway, I think that would be a lot better, or be more palatable. But to prevent them from standing near every single doorway on every single county building, I just don't think I don't think it's fair. I don't think it works. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Commissioner Beal?
Thank you. Am I correct in my understanding that this is already a rule that's in place that's enforced by is it the Tennessee, is it the State Health Board or something like that? Isn't this already on the books? We're just looking to actually enforce what's already on the books?
Yeah, go ahead.
The state of Tennessee can enforce this through the Department of Health. They can enforce it as a governmental entity and say that there's smoke there that infiltrates the building with or without a distance rule. If there's smoke that infiltrates the building, then they can enforce that rule and they can fine people. This resolution fits Montgomery County government because as an employer, we can establish a reasonable distance from the door of our building so that smoke does not infiltrate and in fact affect our employees. I do think that some people think often about the distance ban around the door as just clearing out smokers so you don't have to walk through smoke just immediately outside the building. But this 25-foot basis is, as an employer, Montgomery County has established what it considers a reasonable 25-foot distance so that smoke does not infiltrate the building and affect our employees. That's the basis of our power. The state controls the power otherwise and has not allowed us to do any enforcement in terms of creating a rule.
Thank you.
Commissioner Harper.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioners, I'd ask for your consideration on this rule. The one thing to remember is the state's already outlawed smoking inside of all of our buildings. All we're trying to do is to prevent those buildings from being infiltrated by smoke. 25 feet is a very reasonable accommodation. We have come to a reasonable rule, I believe. The one thing I will tell you, I am a non-smoker. Nearly everyone on my mom's side of the family has died from smoking-related diseases. And you probably know people that has occurred as well. The non-smokers had a Non-Smoker Protection Act passed in 2007 by our Governor Bredesen. And non-smokers' rights are every bit as important as the smokers' rights. I think 25 feet is a very good compromise, and I would appreciate your support on the rule. I know it's taken us a while to get here, but it's very important to me. I know it's very important to a lot of folks out here. And thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Commissioner Harper. Commissioner Leverett.
Yes, Mayor, I just had a question. Do we not have designated areas in maybe the back of our buildings for smokers already? Do we not have those established, or is this resolution
I don't know of
any,
any, Commissioner Leverett. I'm not aware of any. Yeah, the Sheriff's Department does have some at certain locations.
Okay.
Clerk's office does.
My office does,
Yeah.
but not all
Yes.
of them do.
And if this is passed, then that means that would include the sheriff and Ms. Jackson's office as well, as far as
To all county buildings,
all county buildings no longer up to 25 feet.
all county buildings.
Okay. I'm going to try to put this in a form of a motion and attempt to, how about we amend this to try to establish designated smoking areas in the back of county offices and buildings to model what the sheriff and what Ms. Jackson has.
That's totally up to this body, Commissioner. If you'd like to offer that as an amendment, you certainly have the right to do that. I think what you would be doing, though, is you'd either be voting this down or you'd be sending it back to the Rules Committee again for them to make a recommendation on designating areas. So that would be totally up to you.
Okay, well, I will offer that in the form of a motion to send it back to the Rules Committee to establish designated smoking areas for Montgomery County buildings.
Is there a second? Commissioner Garland Johnson. Any discussion on the amendment? Commissioner Harper?
Quick question on the amendment. Are you saying you'll establish smoking areas outside the 25 feet restriction?
Sorry, oops. No,
think
not
that-
outside, but maybe within an area just for our smokers.
I think that would be
Yeah.
totally up to what the Rules Committee voted on to
Yes,
bring
what-
back to this body.
I'd just like to send it back to the Rules Committee.
I'm sorry, but the form of that motion,
Yes.
if you want to defer something for 30 days to be heard again on another date, But a deferral motion like that kills this resolution. It just has,
And it'll come back.
it has to come back.
If it comes back.
And it comes back into this form or another, or whatever.
It's just, it happened earlier tonight.
That's correct.
Yeah. Any other discussion on the amendment? Commissioner Harper.
Thank you, Mayor. We're getting our dollars worth tonight. What I would encourage the commissioners to take into account, if those smoking areas are not outside the 25 feet restriction, I'd have major problems with it. 25 feet is merely 7, 8 paces outside a door, and I think it's very reasonable what we're asking for. So I'd encourage you, if we cannot accommodate these spaces outside the 25 feet rule, then not to send it back to Rules Committee again.
All right, we're now voting on the motion by Commissioner Leverett. Do you have that, Ms. Jackson? Or
Yes, Mayor,
Tiffany?
but I'm assuming you're talking about removing it from the agenda like we did with the previous one, Mr. Harvey? Okay, thank you.
Everybody clear what we're voting on? As mud?
Take that again, please.
Yes, ma'am. Basically, Commissioner Bryant, we're just removing it from the agenda. It'll go back to the Rules Committee if they choose to take it up, and it could come back here again. If you would, please register your vote. Oh, Commissioner Tangi Smith, she had to leave. She had to catch a flight. Ms. Jackson, would you please tally the vote?
You have 7 yeses, 13 noes, 0 abstentions.
All right, back to 1911-7. We have a motion and a second for approval. Any other discussion? Commissioner Johnson.
Just one last note, just in reference to Commissioner Harper, and trust me, I appreciate your comments. My own father died from lung cancer, so I would just ask that my fellow commissioners remove emotion from your decision and look at this analytically. And yeah, thanks a lot, David. I appreciate that. Realize that not every doorway is a doorway that is used for entrance and exit, and this essentially removes smokers from every single doorway, whether it is in use or not. Thank you.
Commissioner Pritchard.
Thank you, Mayor. I would expect that with the passage of this, that then the county would place signs informing the populace of the 25-foot rule. Am I correct?
Yes, ma'am. I think we need to notify the public of what the requirement is. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gannon.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to ask Ms. Jackson a question, if possible, since she's probably got the busiest office down there, and what her opinion is of the 25 feet distance rule, if that's possible.
If she wants to answer, I don't have a problem. We invited, I think, every elected official and every department head to the Rules Committee to have a say in it. But, Ms. Jackson, if you want to answer it, you can, or you can just tell him no.
I don't mind giving my opinion for what it's worth. Ours is actually further than 25 feet. We don't have a designated area that's undercover, so they either walk to that area or they walk back to their car, which is immediately adjacent to our building. But every facility is different. It's totally different than what you're seeing at the court center and courthouse. So I think it would almost have to be a case-by-case basis. If you're going to designate it, someone's going to have to approve it.
Any other discussion? If you would, please register your vote. Would anyone like to change their vote? Ms. Jackson, would you please tally the vote?
You have 15 yeses, 5 noes, 0 abstentions.
Thank you, ma'am. Resolution 1911-8, Commissioners, we voted at the informal meeting to suspend the rules to allow this resolution to come forward due to the importance of it. It's a resolution amending the budget of the Montgomery County Purchasing Department for the purpose of entering into a lease agreement for an envelope printer. Is there a motion for approval? Commissioner Albert, second. Commissioner Creek. Any discussion? If you would, please register your vote. Would anyone like to change their vote? Ms. Jackson, would you please tally the vote?
You have 20 yeses, 0 nos, 0 abstentions.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioners, we have no items listed under unfinished business. Under our reports, our county clerk report. Ms. Jackson, would you like to read your report?
Comes Kelly A. Jackson, County Clerk, Montgomery County, Tennessee, and presents the County Clerk's report for the month of October 2019. I hereby request the persons named on the list of new applicants to the Office of Notary Public be elected. The oaths of the deputy county officials and sheriff's deputies are approved as taken. This report shall be spread upon the minutes of the Board of County Commissioners. You received your list of applicants last Monday. There are no applicants that have filed personal surety, and you do not have any names that need to be read into the minutes for bond purposes.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there a motion for approval for the clerk's report? Commissioner Ray, second. Commissioner Bryant, any discussion? If you would, please register your vote. Would anyone like to change their vote? Ms. Jackson, would you please tally the vote?
You have 20 yeses, 0 nos, 0 abstentions.
Commissioners, you'll see your reports that have been filed, 2 new ones since our informal meeting. Under county mayor nominations, without objections, we have 3 that will all require commission approval without objection. We'll do those all under one motion. Under community corrections, Debbie Vance, parole officer, nominated to serve another 2-year term expiring November 2021. Ann Kroger, probation officer, nominated to serve another 3-year term expiring 2022. Mary Davila, nonprofit, nominated to serve another 2-year term expiring November 2021. Michael Williams, nonprofit, nominated to serve another 2-year term to expire November 2021. Tony Eldridge, private citizen, nominated to serve another 2-year term expiring November 2021. Patrice Hanna, private citizen, nominated to serve another 2-year term expiring November 2021. And Jason White, private citizen, is nominated to serve another 2-year term to expire November 2021. Under the Court Center Committee, Walker Woodruff, nominated to replace Joe Creek for a 3-year term to expire November 2022. And Veteran Service Organization, Tangi Smith's been filling an unexpired term of Robert Nichols. She is now eligible to serve a 4-year term to expire November 2023. And Walker Woodruff's been filling the unexpired term of John Genius. He is now eligible to serve a 4-year term to expire November 2023. Is there a motion for approval for all the county mayor nominations? Commissioner Bryant, second. Commissioner Knight, any discussion? If you would, please register your vote. Would anyone like to change their vote? Ms. Jackson, would you please tally the vote?
You have 19 yeses, 0 nos, 1 abstention.
All right, Commissioners, we have a few announcements. The Clarksville Area Ministerial Association is holding a special breakfast to recognize and pray for our elected leaders or elected officials on Tuesday, November the 12th at First Presbyterian Church at 7 a.m. That was supposed to happen this morning. They postponed it due to the weather. So again, it's November the 12th at 7 a.m. Commissioner Harper, I'm sorry.
Mayor, that's been moved to the 19th, next Tuesday.
Oh, it
At
has?
7 a.m. Yes, sir, it has.
Oh, okay. Oh, today was the 12th, wasn't it?
Yes, sir, it was, all day.
Yeah. Yeah, we were a little late for breakfast. Thank you, Mr. Harper. I'm just reading what's in front of me. The Clarksville Christmas Parade will be held on Saturday, December the 7th. The county will have a float entry. Commissioners, you're all invited to ride on it. If you would, just let Ms. Baggett at the mayor's office know if you plan to participate. Also, Tennessee Achieves, the Mentorship Program for students transitioning from high school to college, needs 100 additional volunteers for Montgomery County to participate in the program. And the deadline to sign up is December 8th, 2019. If you would, please contact Michelle Newell for additional information or visit TN Achieves to sign up. Commissioners, I have done this the last 2 years. It doesn't take a lot of time. I would please encourage each of you to do it. We owe it to our students to provide them with that mentorship role. And if you know of an adult or youth volunteer who you think would be honored with a Governor's Volunteer Star Award, please contact Michelle Newell by Tuesday. This says November the 12th too, so I guess it's maybe November the whatever you said, Mr. Harper. I don't know. But if you know somebody, contact Michelle Newell. And then lastly, Commissioner Tangi Smith left, and I'm sorry I don't get to say this in front of her. She's headed to Washington, D.C. She's doing a briefing at the White House for a nonprofit that she's very much involved in, and is Women Elevated. So she just asked me, or I told her I would ask each of the commissioners just to keep her and her meeting in prayer, and just hope it goes better than she expects. So thanks to Commissioner Smith for doing what she's doing. And with no further business, I'll call on Sheriff Fuson to adjourn us.
All rise. Well, yes, oh yes, this honorable Board of County Commissioners now stands adjourned. Now may God save this state and this honorable Board of County Commissioners.